Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're going to take a fully spoilerly look at just something that Matsumoto does really good. If you've ever taken any writing class, be it screenplay writing or novel writing or even short story writing, you're taught one of the fundamental rules is always make each scene do more than one thing. The golden mean being each scene should be doing at least 3 things. And one of Matsumoto's skills, one of the reasons that Matsumoto can take an incredibly basic Shonen Jump concept, fighting giant Godzilla monsters, fighting Kaiju, and make it one of the best and most eagerly anticipated manga in Shonen Jump right now, is just Matsumoto doesn't stick to this rule, Matsumoto glorifies this rule. Every single scene that Matsumoto puts in the manga is doing so many things. And in chapter 59, we got a glorious example of that with that one flashback scene where Kaiju number 6 with his 4 mega tails is marching out of the Tokyo Bay towards the waiting Defense Force officers. Now, this scene is just doing so much. The first and most obvious thing, the thing that it's doing in the context of this story, is that it's setting up the power of Kaiju number 6. It's setting up how powerful this Kaiju was, which will play into how much it's just going to overwhelm Reno when he tries to try on the weapon. Now, this has been led up to before. We get the deputy director saying that Kaiju number 6 has been on ice and has been useless because there hasn't been any compatible users. We get the note that Reno, who is our best boy, and in the context of a shonen manga, as the lance or secondary main character to Kafka's primary main character, he's going to have some sort of special skill. And then, of course, that leads into actually seeing Reno being determined to take on this tremendous responsibility. So the scene's doing that, but it's also doing so much. It's also playing into the ice theme that we've seen associated with Reno. You have, first off, Reno starts using the freeze round. Secondly, we hear that Kaiju number 6 has been on ice, which is a very specific term. Then we find out that there was an unusual snowstorm that rolled in that was part of was one of the things that caused despair and destruction, because when you have a population that's not used to snowstorms, just a snowstorm can be tremendously devastating in terms of lives lost and suffering inflicted. And if that was some sort of power that Kaiju number 6 had, I mean, that may transfer over into Reno wielding Kaiju number 6. So it's just tying all those themes together. Then we have the linking. Kaiju in Japanese culture have always been on that cusp of fantasy versus science fiction. Kaiju are very science fiction-y, born from nuclear power, but they're also a bringing forward of the Japanese tradition of mythology. And so having this massive number 6 Kaiju have 4 tails. 4 in Japanese, the word 4 is I believe it's a homonym for death. And so, for instance, the 4th floor in hospitals won't be called the 4th floor. The runways in Japanese airports won't have runway number 4, and they won't have gate number 4, just because, it's just one of those ingrained superstitions. It's like, it has much the same connotation that 666 has in European cultures. And so here comes this death-marked Kaiju fighting the death-marked officer. And that's just another example of this scene doing so much more than one thing. Then this just really displays, the scene ties together the concept of power creep, which is both a thing in real life. I mean, just think about it. 200 years ago, any given soldier would not have that much firepower at his command compared to what they have now. Even when armies didn't have tanks, now every army has tanks. Air power, weapons. There's a real power creep as you go down generation by generation. And it's a famous thing, especially in shonen manga. As the story goes on, to keep people's excitement up, the powers have to be getting stronger and stronger. I think Dragon Ball Z is the clearest example of this, with everybody, everybody's a Super Saiyan now theme. But this, Matsumoto takes that concept, that cliche from Shonen Jump manga, and embraces it and explains why. The kaiju power creep has been increasing because kaiju number 9 has been breeding more powerful kaiju deliberately, and with each more powerful kaiju, the Defense Force has been able to make a more powerful weapon. With each battle, the Defense Force has been able to learn from that and train their soldiers better, because this is the real life example. When firearms were first invented, they were tremendously deadly. The Napoleonic muskets, their shoot to kill ratio was tremendous. Not because the muskets were that powerful, they're not powerful compared to modern day weapons, but the armies that were fighting had no concept of how to use them. They'd literally just throw people like meat shields into these lines of musket fire, and everybody who got shot died because of the poor medical technology at the time. Now, we've completely revamped that. We've taken these massive square block units of the traditional cavalry charge or infantry charge, and we've replaced them with 4-man units. And there's the entire schools on how you maintain fire by one person shooting while the other 3 advance, or vice versa. And you can go online and find examples of how the tactics they have from everything they've learned from all the battles that went terribly wrong allow, if you have these tactics, a crew of 4 to 6 soldiers can stand up against a significantly larger force who do not understand or cannot counter these tactics. It's just illustrated because we have this hyper powerful Hikari Shinomiya going up to counter Kaiju number 6. And the officers inform her that they were able to take out some of the Yoju, but they weren't able to take out the Hanju. And the Hanju are shown as Kaiju number 6 himself and multiple traditional Godzilla-type monsters. Now, look at the smaller Godzilla monsters. They're shown as being lesser, of course, than the Kaiju number 6 who's controlling them, but they're identical to the 7.4 Godzilla-type monster we saw Jin Narumi take out in minutes back when Narumi was first introducing Kikoru Shinomiya to the 1st Division. So we see this example of a logical power creep. We don't know that Jin Narumi with weapon number 1 is more powerful than Hikari Shinomiya with weapon number 4, but we do know that the Defense Force learned from that attack. And so you have the 1st Division applying a covering fire to steer that massive 7.4 Godzilla type kaiju while it's walking through Tokyo Bay. Then you see Jin Narumi come in at a very specific angle with very specific gear, and with 1 helicopter and 1 weapon, Narumi's able to take out that 7.4 Hanju without a problem. Now, also, you'll see that Division number 1 is immediately sent to Tokyo Bay, whereas back in the flashback, we see Division number 2 is sent to Tokyo Bay. That could be an example of the learning curve, the learning power creep. Maybe the situation with Kaiju number 6 was what determined that the 1st Division would be the one to meet the hyper-powerful kaiju at the bay, although we have 2 different locations here, so this might just be a geographical issue. But anyway, you have that concept, the power creep, both in knowledge, tactics, and weapons. And this was all foreshadowed way back when the deputy director was describing the Director General Shinomiya's power levels to Kikoru. He says that the Director General Shinomiya's power level used to make him the strongest, as in past tense. He was the strongest in his day. Now we get a look at Captain Narumi right after that, and the obvious implication is that Captain Narumi is now the strongest, or possibly a kind of a skill difference tie between Captain Narumi and Captain Ashiro. But there is that direct reference way back in chapter 30 something, of there being that power creep. The director general was the most powerful in his day, but now he's not. Then we have Kaiju number 6, head, neck, and face and mouth. And that ties into what we saw in the past of this mental image of the Kaiju presence looming over these officers who are either wielding the weapons or dealing directly with them. We see Kaiju number 6, the king of all Kaiju. We get a close-up of his mouth, and he has that exact same double mouth, fanged, horned look that Kaiju number 8 has. And we get to see his head looming like the little guy's head would loom over Kafka when the Kaiju number 8 personality was overwhelming Kafka's personality. Then we get that, again, that Kaiju number, later we get that Kaiju number 6 head looming over Reno in the same way, and Reno saying, "I see, sir, this is what you've been experiencing this entire time." So it's tying everything together. This one scene, it's just beautiful. It goes back and gives more depth to those chapters that we've already seen. It prepares the way for the coming chapters, and in of itself, it's just a banger of a scene. The Kaiju stomping into Tokyo Bay. And I really enjoy the level and the depth of effort as a creator, as an author, that Matsumoto points into this, and as a scientist, how much this scene just illustrates how well Matsumoto does his research. Just look at that one scene. One thing that Matsumoto is really great with as an artist is creating the illusion of movement. I first went off on that scene with Vice Captain Hoshina sitting at his desk after he was researching Kaiju number 8 and Kaiju number 9 before the attack on Tachikawa base. He's sitting there stretching, and it's just one scene, but it really gives you 3 scenes worth of movement. And when you look at Kaiju number 6 in this scene, you can see that his left thigh is raised and his right arm is raised. And if you've ever tried to walk through shin-deep water, that is how you have to walk. So Matsumoto took a well-known human mechanic, or any biped walking through water, uses its arms, or wings, but arms in this case, to balance out. You have to lift your leg up higher and thrust it forward through the water with extra force, and it causes that very distinct stance. Meanwhile, Kaiju number 6's tails are balancing him in the background, and Matsumoto took this human movement and translated it onto a Godzilla body type, because the Godzilla body type isn't just a T-Rex body type. It's far more erect and upright. It's a different body type. And so Matsumoto took this fictional body type and translated human movement onto it beautifully. And it just illustrates how well Matsumoto integrates science into his fantasy. Because ultimately that's what science fiction is. It's fantasy with machines. And I just love it. So what do you think? Can you tell me something that stood out to you about this scene? Because I got a background in science, a touch of an art background, and a bit of a writing background. But I know a lot of people who know way, way more about animation and art and manga and bodies and drawing bodies than I do. And I just love to hear what was something that stood out to you about this scene. So leave a comment below telling me what you think was the standout use of this scene for the story. And peace out, my wonderful viewers. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. If you've already subscribed, check to make sure you're still subscribed, because I know YouTube has been culling subscribers from my subscribed list. Check out the links below the video to get a copy of my book, Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data, or Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote. Available in paperback, hardcover, large print, Kindle, Nook, every electronic version. And peace out, my wonderful viewers. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. 2 books in a series of human absurdity. Go check out these short story collections. What will our little green friends think of us when we finally do make it to space? Find out the answer in 2 books of human absurdity. Humans Are Weird, We Took a Vote, and Humans Are Weird, I Have the Data. Available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo, and Google Play.